the running back room, headlined by Rocket Sanders, in addition to what you're hoping Lenore Sellers gives you in the run game as well. And you hope that that area of your offense takes a huge step forward in year number 4 now of Shane Beamer and year number 2 under Dow Loggins. He comes in here, does Rocket Sanders, with a lot of expectations. Like I said, with what he was able to do at Arkansas a couple years ago, people have high hopes for what he's going to be as a running back in South Carolina. Cut number 11 here, Dave. This is him talking about managing those high expectations this season.
I see it as, it's expectations, but, a lot of people don't see what's done in the dark, you know what I mean? And I see it as, I leave all the stress and put it on God, you know what I mean, and not worry about the outside when it comes down to putting a lot of load on myself, because it's not just me on the team, you know what I mean. We got guys, at receiver, quarterback, offensive line, so I'm really trying to gain trust with them, you know what I mean, and, be a leader, you know what I mean, not just for myself, but as a team and as a whole, because more goals, more team goals. I got, of course I got self goals, but I feel like when it comes down to it, to a winning team, I feel like got to have team goals as well.
And he's not somebody that's foreign to having high expectations placed on his shoulders going into a season. And he alluded to this a little bit yesterday. He came into Arkansas as an athlete who was just assigned to being a running back once he got on campus. And in that first year as a true freshman, he matched who was the leading return back from a year ago, Traylon Smith, almost number for number that season. Traylon Smith ends up transferring to UTSA. Rocket Sanders takes over that lead role at Arkansas and obviously goes on to have the explosive year that he had in 2022. And we certainly can't wait to to see what he's going to be able to do in this South Carolina offense and how Dow Loggins is going to be able to utilize him as well. Further on down this list, again, 25 burning questions for SEC football by Connor Agar of Saturday Down South. Does Nick Harbor put it all together and become a football alien this upcoming season? And, like so many other things, now when you talk about Nick Harbor, once again, he's the number 1 guy on Bruce Feldman's freak list, the only guy to do that 2 years in a row. He's garnering a lot of attention for his high rating in the college football video game. There's a lot of people that are focusing on Nick Harbor now, seeing if he can live up to this billing and potential of what he's supposed to be as a wide receiver. And I get why people were maybe frustrated last year with him not being as good as they'd hoped. But as we talked about a lot, he was learning a new position. He was trying to figure out how to be a wide receiver at the SEC college football level. That takes time. And again, he had some moments, had led the team in receptions last year at Texas A&M when Xavier Leggett was banged up, caught a decent amount of passes as the season went along. Can he take that step up in year number 2? Can he become maybe not even that lead receiver? I don't think he has to be the leading, touchdown getter, the leading in yards in the receiver room or anything like that. Can he be one of the solid contributors, though? Can he be one of those guys that routinely is getting the ball in his hands and making plays when it happens? I think that's the biggest question that everybody is waiting to see. Because, again, the athleticism is there. There's no doubt about that. That's the reason why he's number 2, or he's on Feldman's freak list at number 1 for the second year in a row. Like I said, nobody's ever done that before. Because the physical specimen of Nick Harbor is unique and unlike anything else in college football, a rare combination of size and speed, which we've seen on full display with what he's been able to do, in his track career up to this point, where he, in the next handful of years, could be one of these people you're watching on, Olympic coverage, winning gold medals and stuff like that. He's certainly not far off from being in the mix of potentially being able to do that. But with the track stuff, the question to me for him is, how much can be accomplished this month? Because he spent the majority of the offseason not doing football stuff. He's been engaged as possible, being out at spring practice, being in the meetings and all that kind of stuff, which is awesome. But there's a difference between listening to somebody talk about football and watching your teammates practice and actually being out there and doing it yourself. So how much progress can be made with his development in a few weeks of practice? We'll have to see. Now, he's done a lot of things on his own. He's gone, been in the facility late at night. He's been on the jugs machine doing all the things that you hope he would be doing to help him close that gap and get him to that level that they need him to be at so he can perform and be one of the best wide receivers on this team and hopefully one of the best in the SEC as well. And, how do you set yourself apart from about everybody in this room? Now, yes, physically he is different than everybody in that room, but the experience that some of these other guys have is going to supersede what he has. So how do you go in and make yourself one of the better receivers in this room to where you're getting playing time? Because, again, there's no preconceived notions about these guys when it comes to Mike Furrey because he's not worked with any of them before. And none of those guys, with the exception of Harbor and Russell and a few other guys like that, come back from last year's receiving core, at least as far as solid contributors go. There is no Juice Wells. There is no Xavier Legette. There is no Amirian Brown, these guys that routinely making catches a season ago until Juice Wells got hurt, obviously. But you get the point. So how does Nick Harbor, with his combination of athleticism, with the combination of speed, and hopefully a better handle on the wide receiver room, how does he set himself apart? And how does he make an impact this year? And again, like I said, he doesn't have to be a 1,000-yard receiver. He doesn't have to be first-team All-SEC at that spot. But if he can pull in, 5-6 touchdowns and, catch the ball for 600 or 700, 800 yards, I'd say many people would say that's a solid season. And obviously a big step forward from where it was a year ago to where the hype would be even more intense around him going in to year number 3 to continue to take steps forward. But again, we don't know. We're speculating here because we have to wait and see it on the field or until a coach definitively tells us, here's what we see out of these guys. We see Nick Harbor this many steps better than he was a year ago. We see him as this guy in the wide receiver room or whatever it may be. There's a lot of possibilities out there that we unfortunately still have to wait at least 24 more days to ultimately find out when it comes to what Nick Harbor as well as this entire offense are going to be for South Carolina. Again, these questions come from Condor O'Gara's 25 burning questions about SEC football in 2024. I'm going to jump around to a couple of other things that he had on this list, not just today, but as the week rolls along as well, because there's a lot of interesting topics to really address and dive into in regards to what he's asking going into this college football season. I'll focus on some of those other ones out around the SEC, coming up next. I want to remind you, though, we are still doing our greatest Gamecock moment since the year 2000 on our Twitter page at 1075 The Game. You just have to go over there. You still got a couple more days and vote for what the 4 winners from last week were. And I'll go ahead and give you the options. You have the College World Series win in 2010 against UCLA, the World Series title the next year against Florida, the Women's Basketball National Championship in 2017, and then you have football's upset of number 1 Alabama at Willie B back in 2010. Those are your 4 winning options to determine what is going to be the greatest moment in Gamecock sports since the year 2000. Again, this poll is going to run for a couple more days through the end of the week, and then we're going to crown our overall winner coming up on Monday and go in-depth and talk about it as well. This is all sponsored by our friends at Columbia Craft, 520 Green Street down in the Vista. More burning questions about the SEC ahead of the football season. Coming up next, it is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday here on the Game. A lot of exciting things coming up today. For those that are wrestling fans like myself, at 10:15 this morning, going to be joined by WWE superstar Johnny Gargano. Talk a little bit about what's going on in the WWE and look ahead to SmackDown coming to Colonial Life Arena on October the 17th, I believe, this year. So looking forward to talking to him coming up in right about an hour. But want to get back into this list of 25 burning questions for SEC football going into the 2024 season per Connor O'Gara of Saturday Down South. Got to kind of jump around here a little bit because there's a few different ones that I do find interesting. And one question that is asked here is who emerges as the SEC's leading rusher with so many new faces in the league this upcoming season. For those that are not familiar, when you go back and look at the rushing leaders from the SEC a season ago, all but 2 out of the top 10 on this list have left their schools, whether it be via transfer portal or whether it be going to the NFL. So you had Cody Schrader and Quinton Judkins at the top, Jaden Daniels, Ray Davis, Jalen Wright. You got to go down to number 7, Jarquez Hunter at Auburn, as the first returning guy, and then you don't see another one until Montreal Johnson Jr. at Florida at number 10. So there's a lot of turnover across the board in the SEC this year when it comes to running backs. And again, I know Jaden Daniels was obviously a quarterback who, leveraged his running ability to helping him win the Heisman Trophy. But for the most part, we're talking about running backs here. So it's almost kind of a resetting of ways when you talk about guys in the SEC at the running back spots. And there's been so much movement in the transfer portal as well. You look at Rocket Sanders here at South Carolina, obviously. And if he can be at full strength and full health, there's no reason why he can't once again be one of the better running backs in all of the SEC and hopefully all of college football as well. You have Trevor Etienne, who went from Florida, and he was their feature back a year ago, to Georgia. And what kind of impact can he make there? There's certainly high hopes for what he can do, especially behind the offensive line that Georgia has there. You have a Trip Trainum, who goes from Ohio State after having not been able to be, the featured guy as of yet out there. And what can he bring to that new offense that has a lot of new bells and whistles, including at quarterback with Brock Vandegrift. Logan Diggs, somebody that a year ago transferred to LSU after leaving Notre Dame, following his former coach and Brian Kelly. This year, he's one of many new running backs to grace the Ole Miss running back room, in addition to a former South Carolina Gamecock and Rashad Amos, as well as Henry Parrish coming over from the University of Miami. Like that whole entire running back room has completely been rebuilt up to this point. And again, it's tough to speculate right now who those best rushers are going to be. It's probably going to be somewhere in the vein of, the Jarquez Hunter, maybe an ETN, hopefully Rocket Sanders being up there somewhere as well. And we'll see about these other guys, but it's truly kind of a resetting of things when you talk about running back rooms in the SEC and, what that means for the conference as a whole when we talk about guys carrying the rock. Go to cut number 14 here on list of burning questions for the SEC going into the season. Will Bobby Petrino's Arkansas return save Sam Pittman's job? An interesting question to ask because Sam Pittman, as we know, is kind of a dead man walking, right? Where I didn't think he would have been brought back for this year, but they gave him the vote of confidence, said that they're bringing him back for another year, which, by the way, if they have to tell you they're bringing the coach back, that's usually a bad sign. But he's on razor thin ice. And there's a very realistic possibility that before the end of the season, if Arkansas is not improved, that he could be fired. So in the offseason, when he goes out and makes the hire of Bobby Petrino as the offensive coordinator after the Jimbo Fisher regime fell at Texas A&M, many people, including many of us here, we initially focused on the antics of Bobby Petrino. The volleyball player on the motorcycle, leaving the Falcons with just a note to players instead of addressing his team as a whole, lying on more than one other occasion, and all kinds of nefarious things that have followed him throughout his entire football career. He's still a really good mind, right? He's a good coordinator. He's somebody that can dial up a really good offense and score points and all that and the whole 9 yards. That is why he was hired by Sam Pittman. And in fact, a year ago, in a similar way, he was hired by Jimbo Fisher because Jimbo Fisher had been doing the head coach play calling thing for a while, and it was not working. It was not clicking the way they needed it to out there at A&M. So in a way to hopefully save his job, Jimbo Fisher brought in a great offensive mind in Bob Petrino to shore up the offense. And yes, Jimbo Fisher did get fired at the end of last year, but the offense was actually marginally better than it had been the year before. They improved by 10.5 points per game. And the total number of offensive yards by 45 points a game. This was using 3 different quarterbacks, by the way, which is not easy to do. So what can Bob Petrino do at Arkansas with, a Blake Shapen at quarterback, a former Baylor guy? Are they going to be a top offense in the SEC? Probably not. But if they can be top 10, maybe even top half, then they should improve a lot. And you would think the wins would follow as well. So as much as we are interested to see the dynamic of the clown show that is Bobby Petrino and seeing if he can hold things together the second time around at Arkansas, I'm just as intrigued to see, what he can do with the offense itself from an X's and O's standpoint. Because Arkansas last year was 10th in the SEC in scoring at just a shade over 26 points. And they were 13th in total offense at 326 yards per game. If he can go in there and do anything close to what he did at A&M, where they're maybe scoring 34, 35 points per game, and they're improving that offense to being in the at least 375-ish range, then maybe the wins will follow. And maybe that'll be enough to save Sam Pittman's job. Now, the funny thing is, if Sam Pittman does get fired before the year's over, you would think that would mean that Bob Petrino would become interim head coach. Now, that did not happen last year when he was at Texas A&M, but given his former connection there, and if they've forgiven him as much as they say they have, they shouldn't have a problem with that, right? We'll see. But the dynamic of Uncle Sam and Bob Petrino is going to be an interesting one to watch as this season does play out. The Ultimate Gamecock season ticket giveaway 2.0 making its return this year. Just like last year, you can go online to 1075game.com and register for your chance to win tickets to every home football game, every home baseball game, every home men and women's basketball games as well for the upcoming 24-25 sports calendar. Just like last year, we're going to take the 3 finalists, bring you out to our summer golf event at Chartwood Golf Club at the end of the month and crown an overall winner there. So you can go online to 1075game.com and register for your chance to win the Ultimate Season Ticket Giveaway. Coming up next, our guy Dimitri Ravenos is going to join me. We're going to dive into this Colorado story, one that isn't getting a lot of attention this week and could be the first in a big crack in the foundation of that program. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on this Wednesday, as he does each and every Wednesday. Our guy, Dimitri Urvanos, joining me as we talk about what's going on in the world of college football. And Dimitri, I brought this up to you yesterday. I feel like it's not getting a lot of attention, and given the fact that it's about Deion in Colorado, you figured it would. This piece by Steve Corden of Athlon Sports of what is some very damning, allegations against the Colorado Buffaloes program and what's going on within that locker room.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, I don't think anybody has been under the impression that Deion ran a tight ship, but all of these stories about coaches getting in on the bullying of players. I mean, that's what the story says basically cost Colorado Cormani McClain. That's what led to a guy who was a top recruit last year for them leaving, issues being settled with guns, not firing, but just showing off back and forth. Guns in the locker room. The amount of money that is gambled between teammates there is kind of staggering. Like, I don't know. Like, I think that we tend to focus on the shortcomings of Deion disproportionately to other coaches because he wants you to think things are always as good as they could be anywhere at Colorado. But there's no talking your way or excuse making out of this, man. This is a terrible look, not just for Deion, but for his bosses, for the school, for his bosses that have nothing to do with the athletic department, for letting this run so wild.
And for those that are not familiar, Steve Corden covers Colorado for Athlon Sports. This isn't a random person making a hit piece, and he talked to players anonymously for the most part. They gave him details on this, and when I kind of look at what's being written here, it feels like stuff you don't just kind of make up. These do feel like very specific scenarios and situations that, again, nobody else has reported on up to this point, but this could be kind of the tip of the iceberg for more things that could come out later.
Yeah, and look, you and I cover college football and talk about college football a lot, and even if it's not the teams we cover, we pay attention to a lot of national coverage of teams, and I think that you and I, with clear heads and our big boy pants on, can say there has been some unfair painting of what the Sanders administration looks like at Colorado, of what it is that is actually happening there behind the scenes. This feels very well sourced. This does not feel unfair. This feels like guys that were not given an opportunity to really fit into the team, explaining like, you come in and you know whether or not you're going to make it here or not. And if they determine you're not going to make it here, they're going to do everything they can to get you out, including like bending not rules necessarily, but let's call it societal norms of what we expect coaches to do in terms of dealing with players in a professional manner. Like, some of this stuff is just, I don't know, not gross. It's just like, how old are you? How long have you been doing this? You should know better than this. Right.
You mentioned the thing about, guns being present, the gambling thing of, a couple players there, Caleb Mathis and Colton Allen over a debt of allegedly $10,000, a couple of offensive linemen that were forced to fight each other in the locker room. Shiloh Sanders, who is, of course, the son of Deion, being physically violent with another teammate for not performing well in a certain game, with the coaches being present to see that and not doing anything to step in. So yes, again, this is just one report, but it does kind of paint a very bad picture for what is a program that has been under the microscope because of the Deion effect of everything. And if things start to go sideways this year and they don't improve on what they were a year ago, who knows what happens.
And this paints a bad picture for Deion too, because look, I think that whether or not you like his swagger, I think it is 1,000% clear to everybody that Deion has earned that swagger, right? Mm-hmm. His playing days were the thing that we had never seen before. He earns the right to call himself whichever he chooses, whichever era you remember, right? Primetime, Neon Deion, whatever flashy nickname it is you want to give him. This paints him in a really bad light because his sons Dude, how are they going to get through the world when their father does not control the world for them? Shiloh Sanders is a day 3 draft pick at best.
Right.
Shadur Sanders is the best quarterback in a draft that we all believe has no quarterbacks. Like,
right.
The future is not super bright for these two guys. These guys absolutely come off at every turn like my dad owns the ski resort villain in all these 1980s movies. Like, they are wholly unlikable, and their dad goes out of his way to excuse this behavior, cultivate this culture. I don't think Deion is alone in being culpable, but if you're the head coach, man, all of it comes down on you, and it should. Like, that's what we expect as whatever, fans, people that cover the sport, whatever. Like, you have sold us that this is your culture. Okay, man, then you've got to take it on the chin here.
And Deion was asked about this, a couple days ago, and of course he denied it, because you're not going to stick up your hand and say, "Oh, you got me." Yeah, all that stuff's true. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if there's any investigations that go into this and what ultimately ends up coming out about this. But like you said, if this stuff is true, how long does the university put up with it? Yeah, you're getting a lot of eyes on your program. You're getting a lot of attention that you wouldn't have otherwise got if you hired anybody but Deion Sanders. But especially if the results are not happening on the field, how much longer can you put up with something like this?
And that's the thing, right? Like, Colorado, despite the split national championship in 91, right? That they split with.
I don't recognize the split. They are the unanimous national champion.
Sorry, 90. They split with Georgia Tech. Despite that, like, what is Colorado's football history? Rashawn Salam has a Heisman, and gosh, I can't think about it. Like, Cordell Stewart was a cool player.
Yeah.
But that's about it, right? I could understand. I'm sorry, not understand. I would not be as surprised, I think, if you told me this happened at an Oregon, at an Alabama, at an Ohio State, where football is the culture there. Dude, Colorado barely cares about football. That's how they ended up in a place where they could hire a guy that had one good year at an HBCU and sell it as an amazing coaching hire.
Right.
It's crazy to me that a school so focused on what its academic reputation is. And for those that don't know, Colorado is legit a great public university. In like, its reputation is very, very strong. I'm surprised they would let their reputation be tied up with something like this.
And speaking of reputations, something you brought up as we were talking about this, Pat Shurmur, who's the offensive coordinator, long history of coaching the NFL and all that kind of stuff. Where does he fall in all this? And if he is aware of these things happening, you would think he'd be the one kind of maybe trying to guide things back on track here, because he knows this is a bad look.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not just Shurmur, right? Like, remember, before Pat Shurmur was the offensive coordinator, Sean, he's now the head coach at San Diego State.
Yeah, the guy from Kent State.
The guy from Kent State, right?
Yeah.
He was the head coach at Kent State, came over to be Deion's offensive coordinator. Like, Deion surrounded himself with a lot of guys that had been head coaches before. But the difference with Shurmur and the others is Shurmur was one of Deion's coaches. Like, clearly there is a level of trust he has in that guy to help get him ready for this. Shurmur taking over as the offensive coordinator was sort of about last year, Deion wanting to correct the things he did not know. And so, whether or not he trusted his current offensive coordinator to call plays, I don't know. But certainly he wanted the guy that had carried him for years or had guided him for years in football to be his play caller. Clearly, like, this paints Pat Shurmur as a dude that just can't get a job anywhere else. Like, he's clearly not what it is that we were sold when he joined Deion's staff. This is a dude that just football has passed him by, and he's taking whatever job he can if he cannot look at the culture and go to Deion Sanders and say, this is not how you build a program.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, things don't get any easier for them this year as they go into a Big 12 that is very much wide open. And I know the casuals out there will think that, they're ready for this gigantic jump in year number 2. I'm not necessarily sold on that. They got North Dakota State in week number 1. I'm not necessarily sold that they're going to be able to get past that game. And if you have something like that, or have something like what's going on here, you lose to an FCS team in week number 1, who knows what could happen as the season progresses.
Listen, I am a Dion fan, and I really kind of hate the people that jump to the conclusion that he does not know what he's doing without sort of examining what his goals and what the culture is. But if we are going to look at any head coach who has a systemic issue, hell, let's use Jim Harbaugh as an example, even though these are two very different things, cheating versus a culture of physical abuse. If you are going to sell us that the buck stops with you and nothing goes on in your program that you don't know about, you cannot then claim that this went on under your radar. This was not on your radar as the head coach. Either you dictate everything or you know nothing. Tell us which one it is. Neither of them look good. There's going to be consequence that comes with either answer, but you got to tell us which one it is in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see what happens as more details emerge from this. And again, this is just one report from Steve Corden of Athlon Sports, but we'll see what happens as time goes along. We'll dive into something going on with one of your alma maters that I think is taking the college football world by storm in the past 24 hours as Mr. Worldwide is investing in the Florida International Panthers. We'll hit that coming up next. Drive up hour number 1 of the Extra Point. He is Dimitri. I'm Tyler on your Wednesday here on The Game.
I mean, we got to take it all Miami. We got to take it all Miami. It's all 305, Dade County, the bottom, the Magic City, you name it, and that's what's beautiful about Miami. Miami's always been that underdog, like I said before, and now Miami's one of the meccas of the world. So the reason that is that there's so much culture down in Miami. It's a melting pot, and everybody has come together through food, through music, through dance, through sports. But more than anything, when they take that 305 around the world, they rep it, and they rep it hard. And that's what the record's going to be about, and we're going to have the whole world jamming to it.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, Dimitri Ravanos, the one and only Mr. Worldwide, Mr. 305 Pitbull on his new investment into Florida International University.
As one of the few people that is emotionally invested in the FIU Panthers football team, when he says the record is going to be about 305, does he mean a record he is putting out, or is that the record he is playing for the team? Because I'd love to see one of my alma maters start to win as much as the other. However, 3-5 might be the best record we've had in quite some time.
I believe he was referencing the actual music record, because he does have to make a song about FIU that will be played, I'm sure, ad nauseum at their sporting events as part of this new deal that he has to acquire naming rights to, which, by the way, and I know they've gone through a couple of different names for the stadiums. How unoriginal is FIU Stadium?
So up until I think this year, it was named for the donor that basically paid to get a football program started, because the FIU has only had football since 97, 98. The stadium used to be called Ricardo Silva Stadium. I don't know the confluence of events that led to Mr. Silva's name coming off of the stadium, but yeah, that's a bummer that it was FIU Stadium. I'm all for Pitbull Stadium.
Yeah, Pitbull Stadium sounds a whole lot cooler, and again, this is an investment into the program as a whole. $6 million for the naming rights, but he's going to be, at events. He gets rights to the stadium for 10 days out of the year. Again, he has to make a certain number of social media posts, has to make a song. So it's not just putting his name on something being done with it. He's really going to be a part of what FIU, the true Miami University, is going to be.
Right. Well, so I was telling Tyler this off the air. Like, I mostly did my degree at FIU online, but I spent a semester down there in Miami. And basically, you leave FIU's campus, its main campus, because there are 3 of them spread out across Miami. And it's like you turn this way and the beach is 2 exits down, or you turn this way and you are literally in Little Havana. Like, it is very much a Miami school. FIU has embraced the branding of Miami, whereas the branding is all about the U, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas at FIU, there is a 305 night where everything sort of takes on a Miami Vice look to it. Maybe you've seen the neon blue and neon pink helmets before, and they're awesome, right?
Was it a pink Lambo they had on the sidelines last year?
It was, yeah. The helmets were black, and they had the newer logo, which is just the Panthers face, in that neon blue and neon pink. And yeah, there was a pink Lambo on the field, and then if you were going to the game, the gates were Lambo or Ferrari, and there was a neon blue Ferrari at the other gate.
That's awesome.
That you walked into. And then look, I mean, Mr. 305, Mr. Worldwide, every other word out of his mouth is Dale. Like, Pitbull is the perfect sponsor for FIU football. Will it mean anything in terms of record, in terms of selling this to recruits? I mean, I doubt it. FIU, like, notoriously does not care about its athletic department. Like, I think at one point the university president accidentally on the record said, yeah, we don't really care about football or basketball very much. But it's fun, right? Like, I think that if this happened – no, I take that back. I'm going to compare this in a different way to Coastal. Coastal has a teal field, and they start every game with a chicken that rides out on a jet ski that has been turned into a motorcycle. Can you name a more Myrtle Beach aesthetic than that, right? Like, that's what these G5 schools have to embrace in terms of marketing.
Well, and Preston and I were talking about this earlier. It's very much like the minor league baseball approach, right? Where you have a team, a program that otherwise isn't going to garner much attention. But you tell them, hey, you can come be a part of Miami Vice Night, or you can come see Pitbull play at a game on a Thursday night or something like that. Yeah, that's going to get more people in the door. And as Power 4 football becomes more corporate and like the NFL, kind of boring in that way. This is the chance for the Group of Five to really embrace the weird side of college football and do out-of-the-box things like this.
Yeah, I mean, everything about FIU football, and honestly, like, I think you're seeing this spread across Conference USA, unfortunately, considering what that conference's history was. It's a lot of retread, play on your memories kind of stuff. I mean, Mike McIntyre, the Panthers head coach, he had his best success with Colorado or with San Jose State. Before him, it was Butch Davis, who had his best success at Miami. You see this at Middle Tennessee now. Derek Mason is the head coach, who had his best success just down the road at Vanderbilt. There are a lot of do whatever you can to cause any little small blip of excitement, because even if you are undefeated, you're not even going to be talked about on whatever Miami's version of 107.5 The Game is, or in Middle Tennessee's case, whatever Nashville's version is. So if you can have the headlines across the country with a stunt like this, even for just a day, it's worth it for those schools.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, is this something going to mean they're going to pack out every single game? No, it's not, but could garner more interest from TV viewership. And again, just getting a few more people in the door that, again, kind of establishes a place for you in this grand scheme of college football where, we have 70 some odd Group of Five teams that for the most part, especially now in the college football playoff being expanded, there's probably 5 to 7 that have a shot at making the playoff every single year. And then there's everybody else that are hoping to at least get to 6 wins in a ball game, which FIU would definitely fall into that category. Do something to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the only program in America that wants to go to the Bahamas Bowl, because it's not hard to get their fan base to travel there, unlike literally every other program in college football. Another thing, Tyler, that I think people may lose sight of as Conference USA shifted, they had to go to a 9th conference game, and that eliminates one of the non-conference spots. And one of the real advantages FIU had over everybody else in that conference was that Miami is a hotbed of recruiting. So they could get your lower tier SEC, ACC, and Big Ten schools to come to them. I think they go to Indiana this year, but that was a home-and-home series.
Right.
That's gone now. Like, they lose that going forward. So, anything you can do to draw a little bit of excitement, anything you can do to just make the Miami family say, hey, that would be a fun Saturday, is worth it to a program like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited to see what this new relationship with Pitbull is going to be like. And if you can leverage any tickets to FIU games and try and get yourself to meet Mr. 305 himself, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he should at least, for 2 home games, like, it should be a go meet Pitbull at the West entrance.
I think you would get a lot more people through the gate at Pitbull Stadium now, if that does end up indeed being the case. Well, I'll catch up with you coming up next week. Appreciate it as always, Dimitri.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
All right, 1 hour down, another hour to go. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Oh, as I'm looking out the window here, it is currently dry in Columbia. That is not going to be the case coming up tomorrow, as Tropical Storm Debbie is going to hit us pretty hard. And there's going to be a lot of rain here in the Midlands area. And if you have a home that has a crawl space underneath it, you could end up having some severe standing water underneath your home that could severely affect the way that you live, because that moisture can lead to things like wood rot and floor joist problems, as well as just musty odors and awful smells. If you've ever had water underneath your house or in some water or anything like that, you know how bad it can smell. So if you're experiencing any of these problems or will experience any of these problems because of the rain, you need to check out our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantychemicals.com. Go online again at cantychemicals.com to schedule an appointment with the professionals over at Canty Foundation Specialist. 10 o'clock, hour number 2. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday here on the game. Reminder, coming up here in about 15 minutes, set to be joined by WWE superstar Johnny Gargano. Talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of WWE and also preview SmackDown coming to Colonial Life Arena in October. Tickets are on sale right now. I've already bought my tickets, by the way. Very excited to go to my first ever WWE SmackDown coming up in October here in a couple of months. And again, we'll get into that coming up at about 10:15. So we had the coaches poll get released the other day, which as far as preseason polls, this is the first one to be released. And, you know, the funny thing about the coaches poll, and we joked about this a lot yesterday and the day before when it came out, that I don't know how much coaches put into their coaches poll votes, right? And there are certainly some names or some teams on this list that made the top 25 that are questionable, including a team like Southern Cal at 23, despite the fact they performed terribly last year. And I don't know how much better they're going to be this upcoming season, but brands do matter a lot. It seems like when it comes to coaches who, again, aren't going to be spending their time detailing every little nuance of these team schedules and their strength of records and that kind of stuff that the College Football Playoff Committee is going to be doing. So this is a little more of a flawed top 25, I would say. That, again, I don't even know if the coaches themselves are the one voting or if it's just the staffer down the hall that gets tasked with doing it on certain days or anything like that. But regardless, it is still a top 25 list that, we spent some time talking about. If you look at others in the others receiving votes category, South Carolina did get a few votes. So technically speaking, they'd be 39th if we were able to extend the list all the way out there. Again, take it with a grain of salt because it is, not the end all be all when it comes to top 25s. And we're going to be doing this with all of the rankings this year. College football, playoff top 25, AP poll and all that kind of stuff. Plugging in what the rankings mean in terms of how this would play out with the college football playoff. Because for years, it had been the 4-team playoff, right? Where you just took the top 4 teams and plugged them in and said, okay, this would be 1 versus 4, and this would be 2 versus 3. Pretty simple, easy to do, but it gets a lot more complicated when we talk about a 12-team format. So I took what the college football playoff, the college coaches poll was on Monday and made a college football playoff bracket out of it, and it yields some pretty interesting results of how things shake out with who gets left out and how the seeding ends up working out based on what we know the structure of this 12-team playoff to be. Important thing to remember with 12-team playoff, the top 4 seeds go to conference champions who get buys. You cannot get a bye unless you win your conference championship in a conference championship game on that first Saturday in December. That is the only way you can get a bye. So when you look at the list, first 2 spots kind of take care of themselves. You got Georgia at number 1 and Ohio State at number 2, which again, based on the way this list is, I'm just going to assume the higher ranked team in each conference is going to be the conference champion. So that will put Georgia at number 1 with the SEC championship getting a bye. And I'm going to assume, now I'm not 100% clear on this, but with the 4-team playoff, the top seed always got geographical preference when it came to where their semifinal bowl game was going to be. So I'm going to apply the same rules here, which would assume that Georgia's going to be waiting in the Peach Bowl, which would mean, I guess, Ohio State would go to the Rose Bowl. I know that's not the closest bowl game to them, but given the Big Ten's history of the Rose Bowl, I imagine they would want to go out to Pasadena and play in that game. Now, I could be wrong on that, but that's just my guess. So those 2 teams occupy the top spots. Florida State is the top-ranked ACC school at number 10, which means they would jump up to the 3rd seed, getting a bye there in the first round. And I put them in the Sugar Bowl because that's the closest bowl game to them. And then Utah. This is where things get interesting because Utah, according to the coaches poll, is outside of the top 12. They're 13th overall in the standings, but they're the highest ranked Big 12 team, which means they would jump from 13th all the way to number 4 and get a first round bye and be waiting in the Fiesta Bowl because, again, that's the closest bowl game to them. So you already have a team that is outside of the top 12, based on the coaches poll, that would be making their way into the college football playoff by winning their respective conference championships. So that means there's at least one team in the top 12 that would not get in based on this rule. So now we go with the remaining at-large teams. So 7 more spots to at-large teams and 1 spot due to the highest-ranked Group 5 champion. So we go with the first matchup of what would be the first-round games, which are contested on the home venue sites of the higher-seeded team. Oregon is number 3 in the coaches poll, but they're the second Big Ten team. So that's just going to make me assume that they are not the conference champion, which means they can't get a bye. So they would be the highest ranked team that is not a conference champion, which means they're number 5 overall, and they would be getting a bye. They would be getting a first-round matchup in Eugene, taking on the Group of 5 champion, which in this case is Boise State. Now, the Boise State does not appear in the top 25 list, nor does any Group of 5 team. So that means, so I had to look down at the others receiving votes category, which was Boise State at 30. So I gave them the nod it's actually Memphis at 44. So it would be Oregon and Memphis facing off in round number 1, with Oregon being the 5 seed and Memphis being the 12 seed. After that, you get Texas, who comes in the coaches poll at number, go back up to the top here. They come in at the coaches poll at number 4, taking on Penn State, who is 9th in the coaches poll. But again, based on reshuffling things with the seeding here, they would be seeds number 6 and 11 respectively. Then go to Alabama, who is 5th in the coaches poll. They'd be the 7th seed in the college football playoff, as they'd play host to Michigan. And then you move into the 8-9 matchup, which would be Ole Miss and Notre Dame, who, again, Notre Dame is not a part of a conference, but as we know, as with anything else, the Notre Dame rule, allows them to be in the college football playoff if they meet certain criteria, which in this case would be ranked high enough to be included in one of the at-large bids, which, again, being the number 9 seed, they are one of the final few teams that would get their way in. So this is where things get interesting. And again, I know I threw a lot of numbers at you, so didn't mean to make you go cross-eyed with that. But just because you're in the top 12 or even top 11 does not guarantee you a spot in the college football playoff because of the buys and the guarantees that go to conference champions. Like I said, Utah was 13th, but they won the Big 12. So that would put them in the college football playoff as a 4 seed, despite the fact they are the 13th best team in the country, according to whatever poll we'd be pulling from, which would be the college football playoff poll. So what does that mean? That means based on this, if we're using the coaches poll to determine the college football playoff, that means Missouri at number 11 and LSU at number 12 would both be getting left out of the college football playoff as the first 2 teams out. After that, Clemson 14, Tennessee at 15, Oklahoma at 16. But you see what I'm saying here. Just because you're in the top 11 does not guarantee you anything. So this is where things can get a little bit screwy and a little bit weird when it comes to the 12-team playoff. And look, by the way, I'm cool with 12-team playoff. Like, I'm excited to see what it's going to be like. It's truly a new experience for all of us in college football, unlike anything we've seen up to this point. But as is kind of often the case, anytime we change the playoff format, it doesn't satisfy everybody, right? Like, if you're a Missouri fan and they do end up as the 11th best team in the final college football playoff poll results, they're going to be screaming bloody murder on why they got left out of the 12-team playoff despite being almost a top 10 team. But that's the way the format works, where now you have automatic qualifiers. And again, I use the Utah example as an extreme of them, winning the Big 12 but not being in the top 10 or top 11. But what if a unranked team wins a conference championship? And what if, I don't know, something crazy here, what if Virginia Tech gets hot at the end of November and makes their way into the ACC championship game and takes down Florida State? And they're like, I don't know, an 8-4 team where they'd get in the college football playoff not only despite not being ranked, but they'd be a top 4 seed. because they won one of the Power Four conferences. Like, I know that's an extreme example again, but these are possibilities that do exist on the table for what this new format is. And as I've said many times before, there are unintended consequences anytime you make a major rule change in any sport, quite frankly, but especially in college sports where, it doesn't quite fit the mold of the NFL or the NBA or stuff like that, where you have only around 30 or so teams competing in your league, where you can structure it perfectly. Say, okay, you're going to be split off into these divisions. You're going to play your division opponents. We're going to take the best team from that division, put them into this playoff format, and then everything's fine. And everything's not as equal in college football, and there's not as much crossover of teams playing each other and stuff like that, where you can split hairs quite as easily. So there's a lot of screwy scenarios that exist with this expanded college football playoff, but we're all going into it blind. So I guess we all got to buckle up and hope the ride is not too bumpy and gives us a good playoff and good results along the way as well. Reminder, we are still doing our Gamecock's greatest moments since the year 2000 on our Twitter page at 1075 The Game. Go online and vote for your ultimate winners. We took the 4 winners from last week, put them into a new poll that'll be running for the next couple days, and we'll officially crown a winner coming up on Monday, August 12th. That's this upcoming Monday. All brought to you by our friends at Columbia Craft, which is at 520 Green Street down in the Vista, which, by the way, looks like Jay and Elijah will be broadcasting live from Columbia Craft on Monday, talking about the greatest Gamecock moment since the year 2000. You can go online to our Twitter page and vote for that over the course of the next couple of days. Johnny Gargano, WWE superstar, set to join me. Coming up next, talk a little bit about the world of professional wrestling and get you set for SmackDown coming to Colonial Life Arena in October. It's the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday morning here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on this Wednesday here on The Game. Anybody that knows me knows I love talking about professional wrestling, and I'm so excited. Coming up October the 18th, Colonial Life Arena, SmackDown coming to town. One of the superstars that's going to be a part of that show is the one and only Johnny Gargano. Johnny, appreciate your time this morning. How are we doing today?
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Very excited for SmackDown to come to town here in a couple of months. I've never been to a SmackDown. Bought my tickets the other week. Very excited to see what's going to be going down there. You're an indie guy. You came up through the ranks before getting your time to WWE. Did you have any stops along the way in South Carolina? Any cities around here that may stick out to you as across your wrestling career?
I want to say I did. Like I said, I traveled all over the Carolinas when I was on the Indies, but I also have as well with NXT. So I want to say I've been there a few times. The Carolinas obviously has a very rich history in professional wrestling, and being a wrestling nerd, I'm always excited to go back.
Well, you are a part of a great time to be in professional wrestling right now. WWE has tons of momentum. You guys are selling out venues. Ratings are super high. Revenue is at an all-time high as well. What's it like for you, especially as you mentioned being such a wrestling nerd yourself growing up, being a part of this real resurgence of WWE and professional wrestling as a whole?
It's incredibly cool, man. Everyone always mentions the Attitude Era, right? They talk about how the Attitude Era was the hottest wrestling's ever been, and it'll never get back to that point. But now it feels like we're at that point and maybe going above that point, which is, it's wild to be a part of it. It's wild to be on the inside now. And I'm one of those people that don't live in the moment, unfortunately. So I think years from now, I'll look back on it and be like, wow, I can't believe I was actually a part of that.
Again, talking to WWE superstar Johnny Gargano on the Extra Point here on your Wednesday. You were in NXT under the tutelage of Triple H, and that was some of the best wrestling TV I've ever watched my entire life as a wrestling fan. Now he's in charge of things on the main roster, and again, things are going swimmingly as of right now. Why does he succeed so much as being a leader? Not just because he was a former professional wrestler, but what other qualities about him makes him so good at his job?
Yeah, he's one of the smartest, hardest working people I've ever been around. I always call him the busiest person on the planet. And it's funny that we mentioned like the hottest time periods in wrestling. I was with Triple H in Black and Gold NXT, which a lot of people look back on very fondly. They love Black and Gold NXT. That was the hottest maybe NXT's ever been. And now the hottest WWE's ever been is also under Triple H. I think there's a common denominator there. He knows how to utilize talent. He knows how to let talented people be talented, and that helps out a ton. And he also believes in not looking down on our audience. He believes in long-term stories and letting things pay off that way. And he was like that back in NXT. He's like that now in WWE. But also he cares about the people, and that means the world, you know. I have a great relationship with Triple H, and I can't wait to see what he does moving forward, because I firmly do believe we're just getting started. We haven't even seen where WWE's going to go yet.
You mentioned the days of Black and Gold at NXT, which I'm very fond of myself. I don't think there's ever going to be, in my opinion, a better professional wrestling rivalry than what you and Tommaso Ciampa had back in the day. It's nice that you guys were able to clear things up and are back to being a tag team again. But man, you guys had some great storytelling matches back in the day.
Yeah, thank you, man. That whenever I do interviews or anything, that's one of the things that people bring up is me and Tommaso. And it's funny, like when I'm on the street or I'm walking around, I mean, me and Tommaso is the rivalry people always bring up. So to look back on that and to be able to have that in my back pocket and have that something that we've done in the past is very, very cool. And now that me and Tommaso are back together now on SmackDown, we already got one tag team title run under our belt. Who knows how many more we're going to have under our belt? But yeah, I've been extremely lucky to have some very cool memories in WWE so far.
Well, just make sure you always watch your back, because you never know. It may turn on you again.
Trust me, I learned. I know. I like to think he's a different person now. Look, he's a dad now. We're both dads now, so maybe you never know. Maybe he's changed, but maybe not. You never know. Again,
talking to Johnny Gargano here on the Extra Point on your Wednesday. You're a Cleveland guy. SummerSlam was just in Cleveland this past weekend at the Brown Stadium. Huge event. Roman Reigns made his return. Again, you guys didn't have the best night on Friday, losing your tag team titles to the Bloodline there. But for you, how cool was it to see such a huge event like that being in your hometown?
It's so incredibly cool, man. I've waited my life for that. I've waited. I guess SummerSlam 1996 was the very first WWE show I ever went to. That was the night I decided I wanted to become a professional wrestler. And since then, I've waited for a big WWE pay-per-view to come back to Cleveland. And I think the coolest thing for me, because I'm so proud of Cleveland, Ohio, like it is my hometown, I was just excited for people to like come from all over the world and see what I've known my whole life. And that's how cool Cleveland is. And to be able to talk to wrestling fans now while they were there and be like, man, this place is awesome. You were right. I think that is the coolest thing for me.
By the way, I hope you're feeling okay after Jacob Fatu got his hands on you on Friday night. That looked pretty brutal.
I mean, I'm recovering.
Again, talking to Johnny Gargano, WWE superstar here on the X Point. We've been keeping tabs on our guy Trick Williams. If you weren't familiar, he's a former football player here at the University of South Carolina. He's somebody that is quickly rising up the ranks. Obviously had his run with the NXT championship that was ended a couple weeks ago. But, you know, when you look at somebody like him, who, again, is kind of one of the future stars of this company, what stands out to you? Well, why is he so good, and why is he climbing up the ranks the way that he has?
Yeah, I'm so incredibly proud of Trick and where he's at. To see where he came from and to see what he is now, it's the work he's put in, and it's the drive and the want and the desire to be great. Trick has just such a incredible charisma that we've always seen. We've known from day one that he has that charisma, and it was just him going out there and taking his moment and taking that opportunity and making the most of it, and he did. He's done such an incredible job, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for him, because I think that the future is so incredibly bright for Trick Williams.
Again, SmackDown coming to Colonial Life Arena on October the 18th. Johnny Gargano will be a part of that. As I mentioned, I'm a huge wrestling fan. This will be my first time attending a SmackDown event. For anybody like myself that's going to their first one, what's your advice for a first-time goer?
First time viewer. So first time going to a SmackDown, I'd say just have an open mind, be ready for anything, and just be ready to have a good time. You know, like it's going to be one of the greatest nights of your life. It's just such a different atmosphere in the arena. The energy is just so different, so unique than compared to watching it from your own home. You're surrounded by crazy wrestling fans, and my advice also, just bring a sign. If you're one of those people that want to bring a sign, please bring a sign. As performers, we appreciate it when you bring signs. We like looking down the crowd and reading them. So if you're going to the event, bring a sign, make it as creative as possible, and just have a great time.
Well, certainly looking forward to that. We are a sports radio station here at 107.5 The Game. As I mentioned, you're a Cleveland guy. I know you're a really big Browns fan, so I'll slide you a Cleveland Browns question. Coming off a playoff appearance, what's your optimism for the Browns this year?
I mean, Super Bowl. I got to say that, right? I got to be going off a playoff appearance. All right, if everyone stays healthy, if everything goes, as it should, Super Bowl or bust for the Browns.
Well, we'll hold you to that, and hopefully they can, get things continuing in the right direction after all those tough years of being a Browns fan through the mid-2000s and everything. You're strong for dealing with that.
I say all the time, it takes a certain type of person to be from Cleveland, Ohio. That's what made me who I am. So there you go. Well, I've been hardened all these years.
I was going to say your toughness definitely translates over into the ring. We certainly enjoy watching you in the ring, and can't wait to see you here in Columbia here in a couple months.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you very much.
Absolutely. Again, that is Johnny Gargano, WWE superstar, who's going to be part of SmackDown, the whole crew coming into Colonial Life Arena on October the 18th. We'll come back. We'll shift gears, talk a little bit of racing with Jen Jensen, as we do each and every week on the Extra Point on Wednesdays. That's coming up next on your Wednesday here in the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday. Again, thank you so much to Johnny Gargano, WWE Superstar, for joining me in the last segment ahead of SmackDown coming to Colonial Life Arena on October the 18th. And again, tickets are on sale now if you want to purchase those ahead of the event. But as we do each and every Wednesday, time to talk a little bit of racing with Jen Jensen from the early game. And Jen, our nightmare of weeks off is finally almost over, as cars will be returning to the track, assuming the weather isn't a problem, this weekend at Richmond, and we can finally get things back after what seems like forever since they were on the track in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this. I don't like this 2-week break at all. One weekend I can handle, but two, no. I kept looking on TV like, okay, it's appointment watching. I'm ready to watch something and ready to see some racing, and nope. Not again this weekend. So yeah, it's been pretty barren, but I'm really glad to see that we're finally getting back to some racing.
I will say this: the first Sunday they had off, I was very productive. This past Sunday, not as much. So yes, I'm very much ready to see cars back on the track this weekend. And I believe, if I'm looking at this correctly, because people may look at this and say, well, why is the Richmond race starting so late at 6 o'clock? I think it's going to follow immediately right after the Olympics. I think it's going to go Olympic coverage right in to the NASCAR race, which hopefully will bring in a lot of people that are watching the end of the Olympics and can hopefully do some good things for TV ratings as well.
I would agree. I think it was very smart on their planning and take advantage of the Olympic audience. I think that makes a difference. And maybe too, being later in the day, that obviously they didn't know what the weather was going to be at that point, but I think having it a little bit later may just help us as far as the forecast goes.
And Richmond is the start of this run to the playoffs. Go Richmond, Michigan, Daytona, and Darlington before we go for the final 10 races to determine the champion. And one thing that's been a constant battle with NASCAR ever since the next gen car came about was trying to figure out the short track racing. And places like Richmond, Bristol, Martinsville just have not produced the racing that they did with prior versions of the car. Now NASCAR, thinking outside the box a little bit here, is going to bring multiple compounds this weekend to Richmond, much like they did at the North Wilkesboro All-Star race that Joey Logano won. And, is it going to work? I don't know. But after changing everything that they did on the outside of the car, as far as, spoilers and splitters and underbodies and all that kind of stuff, this kind of seems like the next step of, okay, we got to try this and see if it works. And if it does, maybe we can go from there.
I'm looking forward to it. I love that they have more options, having a couple of sets of the tires, for practice and qualifying and everything. And I think having that option tire is, again, just puts a little bit more in the hands of the crew chief and the drivers. And so I like it. I think it served us well, at North Wilkesboro. So I don't know. I think it's a great option for any short track racing. So I hope they continue to do this.
And for those that may not be as familiar, you think, oh, tires, why does it matter? You have options of a harder tire that's going to last a little bit longer but is not going to be quite as quick, or a softer tire that is a lot quicker but it's going to wear a lot faster. So it's going to introduce a lot of strategies and those kind of things. And assuming the weather is going to be nice on a hot Richmond type of track, that should produce the type of wear that they're looking at that they didn't quite get with the North Wilkesboro All-Star race back earlier this year.
Right. No, and again, there's a certain amount of tires that they're allowed of each kind, the prime tire, and then the option tire. So I'm almost curious, are they going to have to throw a rain tire in the mix on this one, or how will that work? Have you heard?
Now, the rain tire is an option because they are at Richmond. And actually, when they raced at Richmond earlier this year, they were in the first 40-ish laps on rain tires because there was a storm that had come through, and that ended up being better than the final 360 laps of that race.
It was phenomenal racing, and that's why I was like, okay, can we put those tires on a little bit more often, just to have that as an option, even not just for rain, but for any time, because it did. And so I like what they're going with in the same concept of trying to have that softer tire option.
Absolutely. So we'll see that on display this upcoming Sunday, and we'll obviously have plenty to react to on next week's edition of this segment, as we'll have racing back in full. But some news is coming out around the racing world. We're still waiting on the full drop of the 2025 schedule, but the playoff schedule did get leaked yesterday by Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic. And I got to say, I'm not the biggest fan of one particular change on here. So the playoff schedule as a whole, Darlington will make its return to being the first race in the playoff, as it had been in years prior. You're going to get Gateway in the first round, Bristol after that to wrap up the first round with eliminations, New Hampshire, Kansas, and the Roval in round number 2, and then round 3, the round of 8 to determine who's going to go to the Final Four. Las Vegas, Talladega, and Martinsville. Now, I love Talladega.
Yeah.
I've loved its place in the round of 12. I don't love it being in the round of 8, though.
I'm with you, and I honestly think that there are people and fans and NASCAR people who are not going to like that anybody who is competing to get into that Final Four, they're going to ride around the back. In my opinion, that's what they'll end up doing for a good part of the race, because they're not going to want to get mixed up in all of the silliness until they absolutely positively have to.
And you're right, and that's kind of been a staple of the Talladega playoff races for a while, that those guys that, do need to advance through by winning the race or whatever, do kind of play their cards of hanging out at the back and going up and waiting until the end of the race to fight at the front. But one other possibility this, presents, and again, I didn't have a problem with it in the round of 12, because for the most part, especially in the playoff point era, if you're high enough up, you have enough playoff points where even if you have a bad race today, you can still save yourself the next week at the Roval.
Yeah.
Well, now you're talking about the round of 8, where the margins are a whole lot thinner, so somebody's entire championship could end by no fault of their own with 2 weeks to go in the season by getting caught up in somebody else's mess, no matter how many playoff points they have or whatever like that. And again, you're introducing the randomness of putting somebody in the Final Four. Where, again, if you won Talladega in years past in the round of 12, got to the round of 8, well, you still had to fight your way through the round of 8 to get to the Final Four. So if somebody skates through, makes the round of 8, and wins at Talladega, yeah, a win does get you in the Final Four, but I think we're opening the door of potentially weakening the Final Four field with having this random element thrown into the penultimate round of the playoffs.
No, I cannot disagree with you. And I just wonder if with this schedule being leaked, if that's almost giving an opportunity for that to be debated a little bit. And is that something that maybe there'd be a lot of pushback and they make a change on that? I mean, I know there's other things that still have to be finalized. I know that they haven't finished the schedule. They're looking for somebody for an international option and things like that. Not for the playoffs, but just overall the season. So, I almost wonder, do they leak it on purpose, or are they just wanting people to talk about them? I'm curious.
I think we're just kind of getting in the final stages before the full schedule is released. The way I understand it, Mexico is supposed to be the international race, should be taking place in early June, and I think they're waiting to finalize those exact details before officially releasing the schedule here very, very soon. But if it's getting leaked by people like Bianchi, that means it's probably set in stone. And, I don't disagree with you. I think there's a way to leak something and then gauge the interest and change things if it's not what you expect it to be. But in my long history as a NASCAR fan, they typically wait for things to become a disaster first before they end up changing it. The last time Talladega was a playoff elimination race, back in 2015, that was when Kevin Harvick, wrecked the entire field, running on 2 cylinders essentially, and they had to change things after that. So they wait for something to go really, really bad before they actually change things. So the blowback on social media of this being added to the round of 8, I don't think it's going to change anything in the short term.
Probably not, but it'll get them some people paying attention and having conversations. And look at that. Their visibility is that much higher, and that's probably their ultimate goal.
I guess so. So we'll see what happens. And again, we should get the full release of the schedule very, very soon if these things are starting to kind of leak out there. And again, I don't think anything too crazy is going to be on there. We'll get our typical Southern 500 on Labor Day weekend and the usual races with Mexico being the one twist that's being thrown in there. I did want to throw this out there, and this kind of relates to baseball as well. But the Braves and the Reds, this being also reported on by Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic, official announcement I believe is coming up on Friday, are set to play baseball at Bristol Motor Speedway coming up next year. Now,
they figured out that they can bring in dirt, so why not a little bit of dirt and sand?
That is true, and Bristol in the NASCAR world has become kind of the circus, right? Because there's nothing outside of the realm of possibility. They ran a dirt race there. They've played football, college football in the middle of the infield, with Tennessee and Virginia Tech all those years ago. Nothing's off limits there, I guess.
No, hey, why not? I think it went over really well back in 2016 when college football was there. So why not give it a try for baseball? And that would be a record crowd if they were able to fill it up. How fun is that? I have no problem with that. I would love to see the Cubs do that. I'd go.
My one concern with baseball, and look, like I had a friend in college that went to the football game with Tennessee and Virginia Tech, and he's like, it was cool I was there, but I was up in the regular grandstands and I was watching the entire game on the Colossus big screen in the middle because I was so far away from the actual field. Yes, Bristol is a half-mile track, one of the smallest tracks on NASCAR's schedule, but even if you're trying to see something in the infield, you're very far away from it, sitting up there in the stands.
And that's a good point.
So while you have the opportunity to set an attendance record for a Major League Baseball game and all that kind of stuff, if you're up in the top sections of the bleachers, I don't know how much baseball you're actually going to get to watch. That's my only concern with this.
And I guess I don't know the logistics of the infield. Is there anything that they can? Well, no, because you kind of get a fair amount of banking. I was going to say, is there a chance to have bleachers down farther? That they could actually bring in, so you could be a little closer.
They had some temporary ones next to the field when they did the football game years ago, but I mean that was only a handful of people and like the band and stuff. So the vast majority of your audience would be sitting up in the stands. And by the way, baseball fields aren't as big as football fields for the most part. So I don't even know how you kind of fit this within the infield of a NASCAR track like they're going to try and do in Bristol. But I'm intrigued to hear the details. Again, it's going to come out on Friday with the Braves and or Major League Baseball and Marcus Smith of SMI making the official announcement, and we'll get all the logistics and stuff then. But again, as you and I have watched for a long time, there's really nothing outside the possibility of what Bristol can do, I guess.
And I think that's what makes it all fun. Hey, why not give it a try? If it works, perfect. If it doesn't, you tried it. And you've got eyes on your track and people getting excited about maybe Major League Baseball who might be, especially with it being kind of mid-season where people might be fatiguing on baseball and all that. It could just bring a little extra life to the game.
Yeah. And hey, if you go, you got to say you saw a baseball game inside of a racetrack. So that's cool,
exactly.
I guess.
I would think a lot of merchandise will be sold for that.
And I believe we're gonna be talking with our guy from Darlington coming up tomorrow morning to get his thoughts on this and see what possibilities Darlington might be able to do in the future as well. So it'll be an interesting question to ask. Josh Harris, president of Darlington Raceway, will join us on the early game coming up tomorrow morning. And Jen, next week we'll actually have actual racing to talk about when we talk next Wednesday.
I know. I'm looking forward to it, and I secretly kind of hope Kyle Busch can get in because I think this is his best chance to win to get in to the playoffs.
We'll see what happens. Appreciate it as always. Talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks, Tyler.
All right, Jen Jensen from the early game there. Real quick, I want to remind you, the Ultimate Season Ticket Giveaway 2.0 is back. Go online to 1075thegame.com. Register for your chance to win a pair of season tickets to every home football game, every home baseball game, every home men and women's basketball game for the upcoming 24-25 sports calendar. And again, like last year, we're going to take our 3 finalists out to the Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia for our annual Summer Golf Classic and crown one true winner there. Again, go online to 1075thegame.com. Register for your chance to win the Ultimate Season Ticket Giveaway. We'll come back, wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point, a new menu item at State Farm Stadium that Dave, you might gonna get your hands on. I'll tell you about it coming up next. It's The Extra Point here on The Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you. A few more minutes flying solo here, then we'll get Wes and Chris in for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Dave, you know anytime we talk about food, I got to bring you into the conversation. Arizona Cardinals have unveiled new menu items this year for State Farm Stadium. One of them is what is known as the Cotton Candy Burrito. It is a burrito that is filled with ice cream, I believe bubblegum ice cream. It has Fruit Loops and various like piece candies like M&M's, Reese's Pieces, that kind of stuff, all wrapped in a shell that's essentially made of cotton candy. I don't want to imagine what the caloric count on this thing is going to be. Would that interest you at all, a cotton candy burrito?
It would have when I was younger, you
Okay.
know, but now with the type 2 diabetes, it would probably
yeah.
kill me on the spot. You know what I mean? I just fall right over.
Not even one bite?
No, that sounds like it's got a lot of sugar in it.
Yeah, I mean, cotton candy itself is just pure sugar that dissolves in your mouth. Ice cream, we know about that. And then the various candies in the middle, which, by the way, like, with the ice cream, like, it's got to, for one, it's my biggest pet peeve about cotton candy. It sticks to your fingers, right?
Yeah.
So you pull it out of the bag or whatever, and it sticks to your fingers. You got to, like, lick it off because it's the sugar crystals that get stuck, essentially. So that in and of itself is going to cause a problem and be very sticky. The ice cream's going to melt, too. So you got the ice cream in the middle that's going to, it's going to be it's kind of this, like, soupy mess once it kind of starts to melt and fall apart. And then you got the candy in the middle that the ice cream is going to freeze. Like, here, I have a pet peeve, right? I love M&Ms. Great candy.
Yeah.
But, like, if I eat an M&M McFlurry or something like that, it freezes the M&Ms. It makes them rock hard. I don't enjoy rock hard M&Ms. I want them to be, a little soft and pliable when I bite down into them. So I feel like you're making the candies less enjoyable by making them frozen.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Very good point.
So I don't know what this thing cost. I just know if you're going to a Cardinals game this year, have a doctor on standby, I guess, because that
sounds like one of those fair food things too.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I tried the was it the donut hot dog or the donut burger a couple years ago.
Yeah, how was that?
Good as advertised.
Yeah,
Very heavy.
sounds good.
I felt like taking a nap afterwards. But yeah, this definitely screams like fair food because how often are you eating cotton candy outside of the fair, by the way? Like, I don't
No, where you can get it outside. Well,
I mean,
maybe
you sell-
Cromer's.
they sell it at the store.
Yeah.
But like I've never I went to the Peach Festival on July 4th. I did get some cotton candy there, but like outside of a festival or fair type of environment, I don't feel like cotton candy is like something that you're usually going to go out of your way for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And they have to make it on the machine. You can't
They
just
do,
get it in
yes.
the bags. You know?
Yeah, the bag cotton candy, which again, that's where it sticks to your fingers, which is a lot less fun. You got to get the stick, and you got to do I don't even know. It's like magic, right? You just twirl it around the thing, and suddenly you got this big ploof of what looks like insulation inside your walls that's pink, and you can eat it.
Insulation.
By the way, don't eat the insulation in your home's walls. That is not cotton candy, I promise. But yeah, I mean, outside of those settings, I'm not really in the mood for cotton candy usually.
Yeah. But it is good. I'd like to see a place where they do the swirl.
Yeah,
I'm not sure where one is.
I think you can. I think you can buy those little like kits at the store, right? No, you don't.
Can
It's
you?
not like the massive ones you see at the fair, but like you can get a little like cotton candy maker yourself. As you're just like, I don't even know how it works. I think is it spinning the sugar crystals so fast that they elongate? Like, is that?
Maybe.
I got to look up the magic of how
There's
cotton candy works.
some magic in that. Can you get that at Walmart, by the way?
You might be able to. I think I feel like I at one point had like a cotton candy little machine or something. And it gives, it's small, but it gives you a little stick and you kind of spin it around and boom, you got cotton candy on a stick. So if I find one, Dave, I will buy it for you. I don't know when your birthday is, but consider it either a very early or very late birthday present. How about that?
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's in 8 days, by the way. just in case.
Okay, well, there you go. It's perfect timing. If I can find one within 8 days, I will absolutely do that. I'll see if I can find a sugar-free version of cotton candy so you can actually
Would that
enjoy
be
it.
any good, sugar-free?
If they have enough artificial flavors in it,
Yeah.
because the 0 calorie or 0 sugar sodas and stuff, they taste fine.
Oh, yeah.
They're
Dr.
not as
Pepper
good as the
cherry,
original.
0 sugar. I love
Well,
it.
see, think about Dr. Pepper. What makes Dr. Pepper good is not the sugar; it's the pepper flavor,
Exactly.
which you can keep whether you have the sugar in there or not.
Yeah.
I could talk all day about that, but there's your food review segment for the day here on the Extra Point on the Game. Coming up next is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. We will dive back into Bruce Feldman of the Athletics Freak List and who made number 1 for the second year in a row. It's all coming up next on your Wednesday here on the Game.